Twoc Talk Thursdays, you all. And we are live. Hello, everybody. This is another Thursday. Welcome to Twoc Talk Thursdays. I'm your girl, Raquel, and that's Toy. Hey. Hi, Toy Washington Reynolds. And of course, we have an absolutely amazing, another amazing panel tonight. Everybody that's in the room, of course, is family. We are so grateful to have you here. And on tonight, this is part 2 of the state of our country. This is part 2. And so I'm going to allow each of you to introduce yourselves. And I'd like you to start off with telling us how you're feeling. How was your day today? And then introduce who you are, and then kind of throw the ball to the next person, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll start with tonight.
All right. Well, I guess I will start. My name is Samaya Turner. I'm Executive Director of Trans Individuals Living Their Truth Incorporated. I'm very excited to be here today to participate in this conversation. I'm feeling wonderful. I'm feeling galvanized. I know that I've already done my early voting, and I know that we are having an interesting conversation today about the state of our country, about voting, and I'm just so excited to participate. It makes me feel good to be here. So thank you for having me. I'd like to pass the floor to Coach Trent Johnson.
Grace and peace, everybody. I am Coach Trent, Coach Rev, everybody's favorite uncle and cousin and brother. By day, I work in HR and aviation, but I also serve as the executive director of Link Together Connection Center out of Dallas, Texas. I am feeling wonderful, excited, energetic, a little exhausted from work, but I'm still energetic about this conversation and excited to be here with all of you, my family, to talk about what we talk about and do what we always do, just do it in a more public setting. My day has been going well. I have no complaints, and I'm ready to dig into this conversation. And with that said, I'll toss it over to Lady Tori.
Thank you, Coach. So good to see you. It's been a while. My day has been incredibly long. I am somewhere in a different area code today, so I have no idea what time it is where anybody else is. I am incredibly optimistic because I think we got it, y'all. I think we got it. And I'm really, really excited about that and optimistic about it. I think that was all of the questions. We'll see. I'm also really proud of each of you. I'm the eldest person on the call, and I am so freaking proud of you all. Oh my God. So I will softball over to King Sebastian.
Thank you so much, Queen Tori. Hey everyone, I am so happy to be here. I am Sebastian Smith. Pronouns are he and him. Y'all know me. I've been here before. I'm always here. I'm family. But I am the organizing director at Advocates for Trans Equality, and I'm also a part of the board of many trans-led organizations. And again, just a resource provider. Mostly anything you need, you can reach out to Sebastian. So I'm just happy to be here amongst the greats that I'm in the room with tonight, and excited for the conversation. So I'll pass it back over to Raquel.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. First off, I want to say to all of you, thank you for being here. Sebastian, I need some light on that face. You're too handsome to be in the dark. Fix that. Amen. And I'm going to allow my ED, Toy, to introduce herself. No, ma'am, you're going to introduce yourself and tell people how you're feeling, because you need to get some stuff out, ma'am. So how you doing today?
How am I feeling? Tori said optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we are going to win this election, but I believe that that's work, that there's a large amount of work that we're going to have to do once we get into office. That's when the war work for us takes place. I believe that that's when we're going to have to come together and have an agenda. We're going to have a list of demands in place for the administration, because I see a future. I hear everything. I hear all of these amazing campaign speeches. I hear all of I pay attention to the rallies. I pay close attention to this election. This is one of the things usually throughout the years, me and Samaya have really been really have deep conversations around the state of our nation, in the past years. But this year, I've really paid close attention to this social political climate, and I'm looking at a future. And for some reason, I'm seeing a future, and we're not a part of it. And we're not a part of it because we haven't come together as a collective to make it a mandate and not allow ourselves to be a minority because we're so segregated, and come together as a collective and give and some actionable items and to give our agenda, to give to make it a mandate so that we can be a priority. And the only way that we can do that is by coming together as a collective and giving those folks that we put in office that work for us a list of demands that work for us, that requires that we will not be erased. There was an amazing video, amazing commercial that was released 2 days ago by the vice president, about a minute and 20 seconds long. And that video started throughout the history and the birth of this nation. And it ended with the picture of America and what the future will look like. We weren't a part of it. Nope. And and I'm afraid of what that will look like if we don't show up. Right. And this is not just about voting. This is a call to action and a call to service for us after. So yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Toy. Thank you, Toy. So listen, guys, we're just gonna have a conversation, like we all do. And the first thing I want to start with is, anybody can answer it, but do you all believe that it's important that we vote? And it might sound like, of course, but why? Anybody can answer it. Hello.
I'll start. No, somebody, it looks like you had your hand raised. You go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I think it's important to vote at this time because there are so many things on the table. Obviously, as trans folk, we have been used in this election, particularly us. Our community has been used in this election to galvanize the enemy. Unfortunately, the MAGA people, Trump and his campaign, has used our community as a scapegoat for a lot of his toxic ideologies around people. We know that this is a man that is a xenophobe. We know that this is a man that is a transphobe and a homophobe. And we need to be cognizant in this moment that while he's used his platform to make us, particularly our community, the demonized. They're using a lot of stereotypes. They're using a lot of negative thoughts about us to make people afraid of us. So particularly us as trans folk, we need to engage right now. And I'm speaking to my trans folk out there. We need to engage right now. We need to put aside whatever differences we have. We need to put aside the divisions that naturally come up from doing this work and having to compete for little funding and try to engage this political climate. So we must vote. We must educate ourselves on what we're voting on. So that means also voting for your local folks as well. There's more than just the president on the ballot. There's your local DeKalb County. If you live in Georgia, the commissioners on the ballot. There's other folks that are on the ballot that have key, powerful positions that can affect our lives. We cannot sleep in this moment. We cannot be complacent in this moment. And as Barack and them said, don't boo, vote. So let's not complain about the way things are going and not use our vote to activate, galvanize, and push forward what we need to as a people. We are humans. We pay our taxes. We are doing the best we can to survive. And our vote is one of our rights that we must and we have to activate in this moment.
Absolutely.
So yes, and yes to all of that. And not just do we have to vote this year, because it's important for us to use the voice that we have. Our vote is really the one guaranteed way that we have as citizens of the United States to have our voices heard. When it comes to legislation, when it comes to picking the president, and when it comes to a number of other things. And so it's imperative that we make sure that our voices as trans and gender expansive folks and queer folks, and however you identify, wherever you fall on the rainbow family spectrum, family tree, that you make sure that your voice and the people in your community's voices are heard. In addition to that, as Samaya said, there's also a down ballot that's really important. We have to vote in 2024. We have to vote again in 2025 in some places across the country. We have to vote in 2026, where many of us live, again, 2027. And every year there are other elections. Where I live, there's actually a judge. One of the reasons that we're having to go through such incredibly challenging political times is because of judges that were appointed from the previous administration. Understand, I'm a government employee, so I have to be very mindful of how I word certain things. I can't tell you who to vote for, and that kind of. And so we have to make sure that we're voting for judges who understand our importance and relevance in our communities, who understand at least somewhat, have general basic knowledge of human decency. We have to also understand that we're voting for city council people, we're voting for school boards. Sometimes we're voting not because people know us, but because people who know us are willfully providing misinformation and disinformation to trick other people into thinking things about us that aren't true.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll give this question to one of the guys who'd like to answer. How do you feel about the Democratic Party? How do you feel the Democratic Party has responded to the needs of Black and Brown folk and those in the LGBTQIA community?
I'll jump out there since I was off mute earlier. So I think there's an education gap there too. I don't think that, and that's what a lot of the systems that we're navigating. And I'm sorry, I'm not in my usual place. I'm like Tori, I'm in another area code and zip code this week, so that's why the lighting is all over the place. And if I crack a little bit, the weather's also bad where I'm at. So what I wanted to say is again, like I think there's an educational gap that happens. I don't think that there are, number one, enough of us in those places representing us, right? And they're not coming directly to us to get what our needs are, to talk. And I'm specifically talking about trans people or Black people, all the folks that you name, right? Of course, there's Black folks in the DNC, but they're not talking to the rural folks and the folks on the state and ground level who really are experiencing the outcomes of these negative legislation, the outcomes of these bills, and how it's really impacting our day-to-day lives. So again, I think that as we talk about trans people in particular being subject matter experts, because our lived experience matters, these are the tables in which we should be talking about our lived experiences. We should be in the DNC's face to say, hey, this is the gap. This is where you're missing the mark. To your original question, yes, they could absolutely be doing better. Our government overall could be doing better by trans folks because we wouldn't be the subject right now of so many attacks. It's all a political ploy over 1%. Now, when I say this, I'm not dumbing down how powerful our voices are, but we are only 1% of the population. But why are we 99.9% of the focus of these anti-trans campaigns and all of these things? Is to sway you and distract you from what's really happening. Down ballot voting is so important, y'all. Do you know when you get this presidential ballot, it's going to be more than Kamala and Donald Trump on this ballot? Do we know we're also voting for our House and state and Senate representatives? So you also have to educate yourself about those pieces too. It's so important, right, that we know when we go in the ballot box what we're voting for, because it's amazing to get, for those of us who vote Democrat and who are Democrats, to get a Democratic president. But what if she has no support? Because government works off of checks and balances. And if we had more checks and balances and a whole lot of things, we would be more better off. But government works by checks and balances. So somebody has to support her. And usually that's the House and the House of Representatives and your state Senate. We put those people in those seats. So I beg us to get educated about the government, how it works, get civically engaged so we can vote all the way down our ballot, right? And so we're not holding one body of folks responsible. It's not just the DNC's responsibility to take care of us. It's also the RNC's responsibility because the government works for us and not the other way around. And I get off my soapbox. Go ahead, Coach.
I mean, you said it. You hit all the key points that I was going to say. But I'll say this in terms of support. I agree. I did early vote. I live in Texas. Y'all know that, and I'm from New York, so you can understand the dilemma that even that has around me as a Black trans individual living here. But I will say that the support gap is because of the education and misrepresentation. We often talk about how we want to see people that look like us and want to be able to see people in positions that represent who we are. And while we may be that 1%, to your point, Brother Sebastian, they target us because we do have the power to influence change. And so if we understood the power in that 1% and what that power could do to those connected to us, we would have a better chance of seeing things play out the way it needs to play out for us. And so I admonish those, not just us on this panel, because of course we're on the front lines. We do this daily. It's things we do in our sleep, right? It's the folks that's watching us. It's the folks that's listening to us. The people that are in conversations when you at your balls and you at your weddings and you at your parties. What are you talking about? And if you don't have the right to vote, or your right is not there, then what else can you do to still pass on information that your voice can still be heard and someone else is voting?
Mm. Go ahead, Toy, because you're brewing. Go talk. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Get it out.
Yeah. So I don't think I know. I said we do ourselves a disservice sometimes. We minimize our own existence. We shoot ourselves in the foot a lot. I do not believe in no way, shape, or form are we 1%. That whole myth, we need to throw that out of the window. I believe that when we allow people to show us our work and tell us and show us our future, that's when we fall. That's when we fall to their system. We're not 1% in no capacity, and we start to feel when we start to believe that. And I know for a fact that we're not, because we are effective. And the reason why I started off before we even got into this conversation around us showing up as a collective, because I know the power. I know what happens when we show up. I know what happens when we put our mind to things. I know what happens when we, as a people, as a community, as a group of individuals who have decided that, hey, we're not taking what the world has given us, and we're going to navigate on this thing that navigates us, this thing that the world didn't give us and the world can't take it away. And I know what that feels like. And because we know what that feels like, we have been change makers. We have been agents of change, agents of healing. We have been artists, and we have used the world as our canvas. And we have inspired change, and we cultivate and create change wherever we go. And that 1%, I don't believe, and I'm not going to allow no one to make us believe that we're 1%. And when I hear those campaign speeches, when I hear the First Lady give that monumental speech, and she talks so eloquently and so passionately about humanity, and she talked about how human beings and how women deserve those rights, and how every human being deserves those rights. And I watched how on the Biden administration, after he was handed this atrocity from the former president that's now trying to occupy this office again, called and handed this COVID situation, how he was able to turn this around. And when he was handed this, and in order to bring the people to safety and stop American citizens from dying, he said that the only way that in the meantime we can be safe is that we shelter in place, and it was mandatory that you wear a mask. And there were so many folks that wanted to impeach him and say that he was impeach him because they felt as though he was taking away their First Amendment rights, that he was telling them what to do. Behind the mask, he wanted to be impeached. They wanted to impeach him because he told them they had to wear a mask. But it's those same people, and it's not so much as those people, it's us that really believe that we don't have the right to occupy the space that we exist in. Those people believe that they have the right to impeach the president because he told them that they have to wear a mask. But we as trans people, we're okay with them just passing legislation around our lives and having these commercials without saying anything or coming together. We're so busy occupied with fighting over who getting funding, what they're doing with it, what this person is doing with this, what they're wearing over here, as understanding that regardless of what Tori's doing or where she is right now, Tori has a voice. Tori can reach people that I can't. Sebastian is able to reach people that I can't. Regardless of what area or what demographic or work or what sector you're working in, we have the ability to connect and unite as one body and be able to make the impact that's needed. If people were able to have a conversation and make people rethink what it looks like to create policy around wearing a mask and you having people create whole policies around what we can do with our body, and we hear how impactful a person's decision to make a choice with their body is. We have to do better as a people, you all. And we're not 1%. We are not 1%.
So I want to speak to that. I want to speak to that too, Toy, as well, because I agree with you. I agree with you that we are not 1%, because number one, the systems that count us are flawed anyway. So they're not set up to reach us and to reach all in the corners and all the different places we are, and they're not set up for us. However, that argument point is what our opposition uses against us, right? It's what they use for us to try to take our power away from us. So I appreciate everything you just said right now, because it tells us no matter how many, what the opposition says, or how many of us, no matter what it is, we are yet powerful still, right? I know from my research, even the civil rights movement, it was only a faithful few, y'all. Everybody didn't come out to the fight for many reasons. Many people had jobs and homes and other reasons that they could not show up. And those are all valid, right? I'm talking about the very few of us that are in this thing each and every day, right? So we can make a difference for the larger community, and so we can show those the system and those folks with those flawed numbers that no, it's more than 1% of us. Because one thing is that I'm from multiple communities. I'm not, and all of us here, I'm not just from one community. So I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. I also feel like we need to talk about those things and talk about what the opposition is saying so we can combat that together. But I 100% agree with you. We are definitely more than 1%. Definitely, but our power is stronger too.
And growing. And if I may add something to that kind of it so earlier today, I did an interview with ABC News, and one of the numbers they quoted was $21.5 million is what the other party, the conservatives, the Republican Party, right now are spending on anti-trans advertising.
49
$1.4 billion. So if they're saying that we're 0.6, that's the number that a lot of them are using, 0.6% of the population, yet they're spending this amount of money. It shows how much power we have. It also shows that they're spending a dizzying amount of money on a community that they're saying is less than 1% of the population. And it also shows how they're using, you used the word earlier, I believe, Sebastian, deflection. What they're doing is they're deflecting away from the issues that the people who are going to vote for anti-trans policies, they're taking the attention away from healthcare because they don't have healthcare plans. They're taking the attention away from Social Security because they do have plans for Social Security, and that's to cut it. They're taking the attention away from job creation and tax and employment and education and diversity and equity and inclusion, and instead using an issue that for some reason people are still finding divisive in 2024, and that's transgender people living our best lives. And so what they're doing is they're creating an increasingly large chasm against people who don't know trans people personally, and those folks who do. They're sowing disinformation and fear with this $21.5 million that they're spending today on ads for an election that's less than a week away, simply because they don't have a platform to stand on when it comes to all of these issues and the issues that really impact people.
I believe, this is just me, I believe that particular system that has been the bedrock of that particular spawning that particular level of hatred and division came that particular administration came in and it was able to be successful because the campaign was built on division. It came in the first area. The first thing it did was it targeted immigrants. And when Trump first came in his first administration, he targeted immigrants. He went from immigrants, then he went to mocking disabled people. That's the campaign that he started to run when he went from the mocking disabled people. Then he started talking about the trans folk in the bathroom. And then once he saw that, he started to go under the attention of people. Then he went to all of the other different folks. And for me, when you see things like that, they identify pockets of hate. And the folks that they have identified, unfortunately, that a large amount of our people, our skin people, have an issue with our existence as trans folk, have an issue with LGBT folk. And what I'm seeing right now, and this is just me, this is just my experience. This has nothing to do with the Healing Project. This is a toy statement. I believe that right now that this whole campaign is two separate parties. There's the Republican Party and it's the Trump Party. And the Trump Party right now is a party that's galvanized around racism for me. And that's the bedrock of this whole campaign. And the racism to me is birthed out of that removal of us as Black people sticking together. Yes, trans is the tool that's being used. Unfortunately, we're a political pawn, but that tool, that source of that hatred that they now have. I listened to the interview that J.D. Vance did with Jake Tapper. I listened to that horrible rally that took place in Duluth, Georgia with Tucker Carlson. And the bedrock of that is they're upset what took place during the George Floyd uprising that they called. And a lot of it has to do with our position as Black folk in America. And when we stood up and advocated for ourselves, the world listened. And there was an influx of support, an influx of resources. And they don't ever want that day to happen in history again. And they're going to do whatever they have to do to make sure it don't. So they removed DEI. They're removing all of those sources of support that we once relied on to make sure that never happened again. And I think it's important that we wake up and we realize that. And we stick together now more than ever.
And one more thing, and then I'm going to shut up. I think I agree again with what you said. And I think that there's some people who are voting for the former presidents who don't realize that they're being used to perpetuate racism. And you think about how folks who identify as Christians, and then you have folks who identify as Christian nationalists. And you have all of these folks who are part of the conservative party here in the United States who are really hijacking Christianity and hijacking religion, and they're manipulating words so that it fits what they need them to, not what they were intended to. You think of migrants and how Raquel, you're an elder in the church. Trent, you're an elder in the church. And you think of how, I know this isn't a religious conversation, but I'm using this as an example. You think of all of the examples in the Bible, the stories, the parables about how what Jesus specifically said about welcoming migrants. There's scripture that says you have to be mindful of strangers from other lands because they might be angels and you just aren't aware of it. And there are many folks who are going to be voting for that guy who have twisted the word immigrant and migrant and made it into such a negative thing. Also understanding that nobody on this call, and very few of them, are related to people who were here on this land before white people got here from the Church of England, because they came here to separate from the Church of England. And so there's this real bastardization of words and terminology and ideology that they're using that I think many of them don't even realize they're being used to perpetuate hate and racism because they think that it's part of their religion to do that. They think that they can persecute people because because there's somebody who had position and power and money that told them that they could do so and modeled for them that they could do that.
You know, it was really, I just want to say this, it was really shocking to me to see all of the Black preachers that came together in Detroit. And their whole premise was about us per se, for us sinning. And the reality is, uh, God said, with love and kindness have I drawn thee. It brings me to where we are today and what we're dealing with in community. So, of course, some of you may have seen it or may not have seen it. The whole thing came out about Dominique Morgan, right? And it threw me because, not because what they were talking about, it threw me because every little thing that the enemy can use to divert our attention from where it needs to be, that is what is going to happen in this season. And I believe that a lot of us in community, regardless of what she did or did not do, at the end of the day, somewhere in our lives, we've all needed grace. And so if that lady did what they're saying she did, that's what happened then. Do we get to grow? Do we get to do things better? Because outside of that happening, if she did it or didn't do it, what about all of the great things that she did do? How many things have all of us just on this call alone done in our lives that we don't ever want anybody to know anything about? And we as a community refuse to extend grace to someone who has done great work. Yes, whatever may have or may not have happened, yes, that needs to be handled. But do we get not to extend grace? The scripture says, I pulled it up because it made me so angry that, as the scripture says in Galatians 6:1, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. Not only does it say that, Galatians 6:2 says, but watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted, which means your stuff may get a light put on it as well. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. And so for me, if the gavel is coming down on her, right? There's some things that a lot of other people done in community. And guess what? The gavel is coming down on them. And the reality is we all need to extend grace, because that is, just like you guys said the word earlier, a diversion from keeping our minds focused on what we need to be focused on. And that is to eradicate this whole notion about eradicating us as trans people in America.
So y'all know I was waiting, because when the Christian thing come up, now I'm ready to talk. Y'all just went down, came down my street, Lady Tori. So I gotta say something as a Black trans man of faith who goes into these spaces and these churches, and I talk with pastors and leaders across the country. And I want to say this. The first thing is, not to over spiritualize this, but the word declares in Genesis 1 around 27 and 28 that God made male, female in them. And when I hear that and I study that, that lets me know that the them was the other population. It lets me know that we were made. But then I'll take it a step further. In John, the word declares that God is a spirit, and they that worship him must do so in spirit and in truth. And so if God is genderless and we are spiritual beings operating in a natural environment, then we too are genderless to some regard, correct? And so therefore, there can be no biblical standard, there's no Bible, there's no sermon, there's no doctrine that can erase our existence, because it does not exist. And so the word does not lie. And even when God says, vengeance is mine, I shall repay. So there's some things to what you just said about to the situation that happened with our sister. At the end of the day, we all have our own cross to bear. At the end of the day, we all have our own path and our own journey. And last week, Lady Twoc, you said something that piqued my mind. You said exit strategy. And I think even as a man who's a preacher, it is my job to create an exit strategy, even from the pulpit. I need to be able to go into a church or to an establishment or sit down with my preacher friends and not be afraid to call them on the carpet about the doctrine that they are spreading that does not represent Christ. And when we don't say that, those of us that are in these positions, that are queer folks, that are part of the alphabet rainbow, however you want to call it, we have a job when it comes to those faith-based leaders to hold them accountable. And so whether we're a part of TFAM, whether we're a part of Church of God in Christ or United Methodist, UCC, whatever, all the alphabet that come with that, we have a responsibility when we see them gather in Detroit. Somebody has to go up and say something. Somebody has to write the letter and show up at the table and have the conversation to let them know that we still preach it and we still call and God still loves us. And this is why. We can't keep letting them utilize a Bible that doesn't even speak about us if we want to take it there, talking about color and from the basis of who we are as humans. We can't allow people to use that as a weapon to silence our voice.
I want to say in this moment that what I'm hearing in this call is that we are a group of people, and I know this about us, but I think that I need to say this out loud for our allies listening, for folks that are present on this call that are wondering what it is about trans folk. We are people of faith, and I know you can see that in this call. But the rock and a hard place between being Black and trans is that the word, as they have pointed out, has been bastardized to make us not heirs to the throne, to make us not be able to be worthy to sit at the table. And unfortunately, that rock and the hard place that I'm speaking of being Black and trans is that unfortunately, Black people have bought into the belief that we are not you. As Black trans folk, that we have somehow, by choosing to identify, choosing to be who we are, we have disavowed our Blackness, or somehow we've aligned with whiteness, because there is a misperception that this is something new, that this is something that has just come out of current pop culture, that we are out here trying to trick people or deceive, that we are out here trying to get something that is not due us. But as my wonderful folk of faith and myself have pointed out to you guys, we have been here since the beginning of time.
That's right.
This is something now, only now, that they are using to now point out to this community to say, look at them, look at them. And unfortunately, our people, our melanated people, are buying into the toxicity. Because at one rally, they will use us as a community and say, those others, those people are the problem. And in the next rally, it's the Haitians eating cats. And in the next rally, it's the Puerto Ricans are trash. So we need to be mindful that all of the folk in the diaspora are under attack by this logic that perverts the word, that perverts the faith of our people. Because we, Black people, are a faith-led people. And they have found, and I'm sure in some of that $21 million that they're spending, they are spending it to target Black people to hate trans people. Yeah. And unfortunately, our people are eating that up hook, line, and sinker. And so for my allies listening in this moment, you need to divorce yourself from the reality that the same paddle they're going to use to hit us ain't going to come around and smack you too. Because some of you think that you are above what is happening to us, happening to you. The way that they're trying to control our rights, the way that they're trying to minimize our bodies, the way that they're trying to minimize women's bodies will also eventually affect the incarceration rate of Black men, will also affect the way that they're treating that are being impacted by what he's talking about. But some people don't want to see that. In this oppression Olympics, nobody wants to be on the bottom. Nobody wants to be there. And so what they're doing is exploiting other people's desire to be better than somebody, to look down on somebody. And unfortunately, our people are believing this. So for my Black allies right now, for my pastors that went and sat in Detroit and sat at that toxic table, do be ye not deceived. He was lying to your face. Not only that, he was manipulating your faith to make you think that you are better than somebody. Because what we've confirmed in this conversation is that Christ always had room for us.
Listen, you can't look down when you're already on the bottom. You hear me? So
that's real good. I have a question for you all. How do we combat the transphobic messaging that is being spewed in this from the Republicans during this election?
So I'll start with this. I think there are two things that we have to do. Number one is, as soon as you hear misinformation and disinformation, misinformation is when you make a mistake. You tell something wrong. I'm telling Samaya that the 7-Eleven is 2 blocks down the street and didn't make a left when actually she should have made a right. I made a mistake. That's misinformation. Disinformation is when she wants to go to 7-Eleven and I send her to CVS. I told her something wrong on purpose because I didn't want her to get to 7-Eleven. And so what they're doing is they're using misinformation and disinformation. And so I think it's important that when you hear those things, and the folks that know us, love us, or just know us, you don't even have to love us, just know us, that when you hear misinformation and disinformation, that immediately you challenge it and correct it. You have to sometimes respectfully, sometimes not so respectfully challenge it, but you also have to correct it. And often the correction is simply common sense. You think of bathroom bills. Bathroom bills were some of the most disgusting and inhumane thing that was ever promoted. And they were promoted to keep trans people from using the bathroom. And the truth is, trans people have been pissing as long as we've been alive. That's the truth. We've been using bathrooms. And I say it all the time. And I think Sebastian's heard me say this. If you know the genitals of the person in the stall next to you, they shouldn't be arrested. You should. So when you hear misinformation, disinformation, immediately you challenge it. And also, I think it's important. I don't think any two of us are going to live the same life, but I think we also have to model for people what transness can look like, what being voting citizens and people who participate in a civil society, what that looks like. The Constitution, I'm looking at all of you, and I know all of you, and we've broken bread together. The Constitution wasn't written with anybody on this call in mind, not one of us, and most of the people that are viewing. There were 55 people who attended all or parts of the Continental Congress, and out of that 55, there really were about 5 to 7 old white men who created a document that worked for them. They didn't take women and people who could carry children into mind. They didn't take into consideration the lives of people who weren't white, who didn't own land, who were not married. None of those things were taken into consideration. And so they created a document that worked for them. That's why there are amendments to the Constitution and so many other things. And so we have to make sure that we're modeling for folks what it can look like. We're going to make mistakes. You brought up Dominique Morgan. She's a great example. I think it's really too soon for any of us to be publicly commenting on it because we love her and we support her in whatever happens next. And at the same time, we can't discount all the good stuff that she's done with anybody. And we want to make sure that people hear that. And so we have to model for folks what it can look like to basically live your life as the antithesis of what those folks are telling you.
I'm telling you, we got such a great group of people, right? That every time somebody talk on here, it's kind of like, not that's it. Does anyone else want to speak on that? How do we combat transphobic messaging that is spewed from the Republicans during this election?
I'll just really briefly because I think I would definitely a lot of my response was going to mirror what Tori just spoke about, and I think too when you feel safe. So let's talk about safety too, right? Because I know sometimes you don't feel safe if someone's in a space and challenges you or saying something derogatory about trans people. We're saying voting is how you still take an action against that, right? We're saying when you see those annoying text messages and emails from the different organizations, how about click the link every once in a while just to see what's happening, just see how you can sign up for something. Showing up is an action too. Showing up when we're having things and doing things and showing you how to take action is also a way to combat this negative messaging as well, right? So if you're in a position you feel safe and feel like you can combat the disinformation and misinformation, you do that in the moment and you always lean on your values. Lean on your commonalities. I talked about last week about the HVAC guy in my house and what all the stuff he started saying about these ads he had saw just really unprompted. But the one thing he could see eye to eye with me on, if it was nothing else, and once I broke that ice with him, we both black, brother. And once I said those words, I was able then to go in to my transness and explain the falsehood of those ads and all of those things. And I won't shake in front here for y'all at all. The interview was from the organization that I work with, that I work at. The original interview was from our old ED with Kamala, and that's where they took those inserts out. So our organization is also putting out the correct, we have actually already put out the accurate video, what she really said, and the questions that were really asked of her in that interview, so people could see some more context to that particular interview. Did she still say everything right? Is she still now saying everything right? Nope. But what we have a chance to do is get in there with our folks like me and Tori and other people, and you all as well as community, to have those conversations directly with her, because she's ready to listen. She has been a champion for trans rights for a long time, right? So again, I think part of combating the misinformation and the disinformation is make sure you feel safe and always lean on your values. Always talk about something that you know is common. And for me, in my moment last week, it was blackness. It was blackness. So lean on your values, and you can always get people, to kind of soften up and hear you in that way.
And I think sometimes it's kind of unfair to ask us what to do in that moment um, when we are so battered and beaten up from having to defend our existence daily, having to defend the intersections that we have to navigate daily. There are so many times when we have to defend our existence, to when like what we're dealing with now is the interview that she just had. There were so many community members that were crying out. Could she just even say the word trans? Could she just say the word? And she didn't even say the word. And all the folks just needed to be affirmed in that moment. Could she just say the word? And in that moment, I was frustrated because I got some backlash from some community members, because I felt as though I had the answers, because I know what the Biden administration have done for trans and gender diverse community members. I know what the plans in gender based violence looks like. I know how much resources and the protections and all of the resources that was ushered in for our community under that administration. And I also have to think about that was under Biden's administration. And somebody said, well, we know what Governor Tim Walz is going to do. But I also had to think about this. There is some historic trauma that has been ushered in to Black trans women and to Black LGBTQ folk by Black women and by Black folk. And when they had to sit back through that, there was a lot of trauma. Let's be honest. The Black community had to relive because of the inability of this Black woman being able to say something in this moment, to be able to speak to the community that just needed to hear her say their name or to affirm them in that moment. And her inability to do so for whatever reasons, even though I felt like that whatever she said was going to be used as talking points or whatever reasons, but I understood in that moment. I had to remove myself from it and think about my community members that's not privileged to be in the rooms that I'm in, or not able to do this work that I do, or do the work that we do, and be able to understand it. And I wanted them to feel safe, and she wasn't able to do that. So sometimes it's not just about what can we do, what can they do to support us? Because right now there's no one supporting us. We see all of these commercials. Who's combating them? I watch rally after rally, campaign after campaign, and none of them said trans folk, and they're protected.
You know, something you said, Toya, that really strikes out to me is who is combating it. And what I'm finding very, very interesting is that there, with greater visibility from a lot of folks in our community, it did not mean that they brought their mission and vision statements with them when they walked in those rooms. And unfortunately, there are too many people that put in their mission and vision statement, the goal is to raise awareness, the goal is for visibility, the goal is to do these things that they know are going to get them grants. But then when they secure the bag, they close the door. And the conversation then becomes, well, how much more money can I get? How much more money? How many more Zoom calls can I get on? How many rooms, exclusive rooms and White House visits can I get? And when they get there, they don't bring their mission and vision statements. They're not actually bringing the work with them and the reason why they say they got in the work. Because see, the truth of the matter is that those that step on this mantle of leadership, because I believe it's a mantle, we are taking on the power position of speaking on behalf and advocating, because that's what an advocate is, advocating for a community that is not there with us. But oftentimes we will get these appointments, we will get in these situations, and then we just want to be one of the cute girls in the room. We don't want to talk about why we're really there. The communities that are being beaten, the communities that are still facing domestic violence, the communities that are still dealing with HIV and AIDS at a disparate rate, and while resources are being cut. We're not talking about really what our mission and vision statements are. We just want to be seen. And in being seen, we are also attacking one another. So instead of using our energy and the collective things the power that we have to combat the evils that are going on and the misinformation, we are now turning it on each other. And we're now fighting like crabs in a barrel and speaking to the Dominique situation, judging and pointing and bringing up our own situations so we can get mad at each other and we're not at all talking about why we got into this work, because we've forgotten that. And that is the part that bothers me. It's because those of us that have stepped into leadership and took on that mantle are not walking in the mantle. We're just carrying the bags and wearing the shoes and sitting in the room. And we're presenting ourselves as not like them, thinking that is going to make the difference. When we actually remember that we are them and that we got money in these positions to represent them, then they will feel like, oh, well, if we invite trans people here, they're going to be on our ass if we don't speak their name. If we invite trans people into this space, they're going to hold us to the fire if we don't represent the community properly. But we have to hold our leadership accountable for dropping the ball, getting the visibility and access, and not bringing, as I said in the beginning, their mission and vision statements with them.
My God.
I don't even know if I want to say what I want to say because you just got my hair on my arms. The word you said was accountability. And I think oftentimes we jump on these bandwagons in community when it's the negative. When you said combat, we can't just wait till it's election time to join together. This should be something we're doing every year, all year long, every month, every quarter, rallying, whatever the case may be. Make a strategic plan to do that. But the issue is, just to what you said, it's accountability. We have forgotten why we started this in the first place. Many of us, and I'll be first to say, my story and my testimony is different. When you come from nothing and you come from never being able to have access to anything, and everybody's told you you're not worthy of anything and you don't deserve anything and you can't go into this space, the moment you get access, you're too busy trying to hold it like this, because you've never had anything. And so then when it's time to sow again, your hands is closed and you can't get nothing with your hands like that. But we're not holding people accountable who are in these rooms or who are chasing the bag or whatever, getting the money. Because baby, wherever it's at, I'm gonna tell you now, Trent don't know, because I ain't got the money, okay? I don't know where it is. Everything I do come from me. But we don't hold people accountable. And I don't know if we're afraid to. I don't know if we don't want to mess up our good relationship with people. We don't want to lose our good Judy, our little good piece of booty. I don't know what it is, but we have to hold each other accountable. We have to. And I don't know what the fear is, whether somebody's right or wrong. We have to always remain on the side of right. You can make a mistake. You can make an error. We are human. None of us are perfect. We are going to fall multiple times a day. But when I fall, Sebastian should be able to call me on the carpet and say, Trent, that wasn't cool. If Tori make a mistake, I should be able to call her. Hey, sis, that wasn't right. That ain't how we operate. That's not why we doing this. That's not why we in this work. Why you speaking like that? Why you didn't break that up? But instead, we share all the negativity. We keep sharing it. We keep exploiting it, keep telling more people what the person did instead of saying, talk to me. If you did take the money, girl, what's going on? Tell me what you need. Tell me what's going on in your life. But we don't say that. We rather put them up and shine a light on how bad they are, not realizing when we close the door in our house and turn our lights off, we got to look in the mirror and see how bad we really are.
Absolutely. My God. My God. It starts with allowing people to self-identify, allowing people to self-identify and stop policing and stop policing what it looks like. Stop policing what this work looks like. The healing project is the healing project.
Yes.
And we can't control what people are healing from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just it. And we're not here to diagnose what that healing journey is going to look like. Our job is to provide support. And you identified what that healing support that we're going to give you will look like. It's not our job to determine what that is going to look like. And I think that's what the issue is when we talk about this particular arena and the services that people have provided. They have gotten to a point where they believe that they're the experts. I will never be the expert of another human being. And the day that I believe that I'm the expert, I have fulfilled my assignment for the day.
Yeah.
I will never be the expert of another human being. My job is to learn so I can be a better service to you. I can never be the expert of you. You tell me what I can do to support you, and I use my tools and the knowledge that I have learned so I can better support you. But I can't help you unless you tell me. I can never totally assume that I have all the answers. That's not it. And we have some folks that really believe that they're the experts. And that's where we all go wrong. This work is not no one size fit all. And it's not. And we cannot force people, oh, they're not doing the work because it doesn't look like you want it to look. Right. You wear 13, ma'am. No, nobody's going to fit that shoe. Very few people want to wear that size. Let's be honest. You know, yeah. So we have to stop doing that. We can't minimize people's existence and impact because it's not showing up the way you want it to.
I agree. I want to say something really quick before looks like we're about to wrap up here shortly. I'm not sure how long we're on tonight, but I wanted to say something too, and I think it kind of I'm getting little pings from everything that everybody is saying, and I want to say this to kind of something of what Samaya was saying is that we oftentimes talk the talk but don't know how to walk the walk. We talk a good game. We got a lot of great language in our heads. You know, we talk a really good game, but when it's time to walk that walk, it doesn't show up like it needs to show up, you know. And Rarity put it in the chat, and that kind of in the comment section, that kind of jogged my mind about it, is that there is a fear when we do hold the people accountable, right? It's a fear that abandonment, that rejection, people gonna leave us. That's a valid fear. However, we talk about reformative and restorative justice, but when it comes time to do it in practice, when it comes time to actually do it in practice, y'all, we are missing the mark. Because if we did it in practice, people could be held accountable and know that does not mean I throw you away. It may mean we change our relationship dynamics a little bit, or it might bring us closer because I was able to hold you accountable. You were able to be honest with me, and we were able to move on past this and get to restoration. Yeah. So again, if we spout all these amazing advocate words and all this grant language when we speak, right up until it's time to actually walk the walk, right? So I beg us all as a community, you know, and I agree with Tor. I think it's too early for any of us to be making public comments on this situation. I think we all should sit back and support Dominique and support everybody on all sides, support our people ultimately, right? Yes. But, you know, I really feel like as a community, we have to really learn how to practice restorative and reformative justice and what it really looks like in-house. For some of this, we can take care amongst each other, can we not? Yes. Can we not pick up the phone and handle this right here together with each other? Can we not? Because there are bigger fish to fry. Yes. And that's it. I just wanted to, again, make sure once we talk about these concepts, we actually learn the principles of them and we do them in our actual walk.
That's good. And let me leave one more quick nugget if I'm old. and so what I and
somebody needs to mute, please.
There's like a call going in the background.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tori.
So we have in this election in just a few days, really in a few hours, we have a party who is running on the concept that there is no accountability for any of their actions. There's no accountability for January the 6th. There's no accountability for lies. There's no accountability for sexual violence. There's no accountability for cheating on multiple spouses. There's no accountability for nothing. bleach, injecting bleach. There's no accountability there. And then we have the other party who is imperfect as they are, has said, I am willing to learn more. I need to know more. And I apologize for my shortcomings. All of us, I wish that Kamala Harris had used the word trans this time like she has so many times in the past. I wish she had. The truth is, we know what her record is, and we know where she stands. And at the same time, there are people who needed to hear that. That's a shortcoming. That also goes to accountability. So we have to vote, I believe, for accountability shows humility. It shows room for growth. It shows human qualities. It shows all of the things that those of us who follow Christ believe that Christ stood for. And so we have two examples that are as far away as
Ooh.
the sun is from the moon.
Yes, God. Talk, Tori.
Let me stop because I'm
Yeah,
about
go
to.
ahead. Keep
No, you
going.
talking good.
Yeah.
You preaching now.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Go ahead and turn that up. Round it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
keep going.
So we have their ideological differences, and we have one party that I think will make people feel that it's us versus them. And it's not. I don't have a uterus, but I wept when Roe versus Wade fell, because for all of the people who do have uteruses, who love people who have uteruses, and who need that type of reproductive health care, I weep for that. I also weep because I understand that that is yet another barrier to us getting the equality and equity that we deserve when it comes to healthcare. And it is yet another example of how a loud minority of folks believe that every person in this country should live in the way that they want us to, not in the way that God intended. I'm gonna shut up because I'm taking up too much space.
No,
But
you're not. No, that's what you're here for. You showed up tonight, and I asked you to be here to take up space. We are coming, down to the end, and I want to say, first and foremost, I thank each of you for being here. When I called you, or whenever I call you, you guys just say yes, and yes, and I'm grateful for that. One last question I want to ask, and this took Sebastian up last time. One last question I do want to ask. So, this was about the Pope. And the Vatican said, issued a new document approved by Pope Francis, stating that the church believes that gender fluidity and transitional surgery, as well as surrogacy, amount to efforts to human dignity. The sex a person is assigned at birth, the document argued, was an irrevocable gift from God, and any sex change intervention, as a rule, risks threatening the unique dignity that person has received from the moment of conception. People who desire a personal self-determination, as gender theory prescribes, risk succumbing to the age-old temptation to make oneself God. Regarding surrogacy, the document unequivocally stated the Roman Catholic Church's opposition, whether the woman carrying a baby is conceived into whether the woman carrying a baby is coerced into it or chooses to subject herself to it freely. Surrogacy makes the child a mere means subservient to the arbitrary gain or desire of others. The Vatican said in the document, which also opposed in vitro fertilization. Any opinions, any thoughts? Go ahead, Samaya.
She was gonna get it.
I have an opinion. This is what happens.
No.
This is what happens when you have white men in power making decisions for everyone, people, communities that they don't represent. The Pope don't have a uterus. The Pope don't know. The Pope is not an expert on reproductive justice. The Pope is a man that has been given the power by other men, in my opinion, to represent God. They hold him up. I personally am not Roman Catholic. The Pope's word is not sacrosanct in my life, and the Pope ain't talked to me. He don't know what's going on.
That's what Sebastian said.
He don't understand nothing about what my life is. And so, unfortunately, while I do hear what he has to say, and it may be persuasive to some people, he is not the final authority on Christ in my life. And so
Yeah.
I hear what he has to say, and I respect that for whoever thinks that that's valuable, that may hurt their feelings. So now let me say this. I do know that there are a lot of trans folk who will hear that and hear that they are being denied, that their existence is being denied. I know that there are women who have had children via surrogacy that will wonder about the whole validity of their pregnancies because of what this is. And this is purely reactionary, in my opinion, to how other people are feeling, to the world that we're in, to the political climate that we're in. This is the Roman Catholic Church trying to reestablish themselves after they've been caught out touching people.
Come on.
Now establish order. Now you worried about what's going on in people with other people in their wombs. Let's get into, have y'all really addressed the sexual abuse in your own? So now, respectfully, I don't want to step on no toes. Respectfully to everyone that supports the Pope and believes that that man is speaking from God, I am sorry in this moment that you feel like you have been not heard, and that you feel like maybe your position in Christ is in question because of something that he said. But I want you to know that my opinion is that Christ is bigger than any man, and that no man has the ability to say what God has to say on the matter. And that's my opinion.
Talk, Samaya. Do you hear me?
Samaya, you came to show out tonight. You showing out tonight. I mean,
my God.
Yeah.
And that's what you call a mic drop.
Listen, I promise you.
Wow. This has been an absolutely amazing town hall, conversation, family table sit down. I thank you all. For those who haven't voted, I know you're going to go out and vote. And listen to this, guys. Whatever we do, let's make it our business that after this election is over, and it is in our favor, that we come together, that we have already come together even greater. We need to start doing that and making that happen now. So when it does go in our favor, we're able to show up in numbers to be able to help her, to be able to teach her, to be able to teach that whole, what do they say, called a cabinet, the whole administration, right? How to show up and stand up for who we are. This has been another.
The real work starts for me after November the 5th. This is going to be prolonged, but for us, that's believers, for us that know that we know what history looks like for us. We're fighters, and we know what that looks like. But the work for us starts now. Yeah. We have to draft up what that agenda looks like for us, so we can be ready to hand that over. And we cannot wait for our skin folks to wait for reparations. We have to hand our demands over, and we have to let them know that we're not a minority. We don't accept those words. We know our history. We know we have always been here. Only people that's unsure of their history, their placement, and their value accept words that are demeaning and erase and then eradicates them. We know who we are. We know our power, and we're going to hand them over because we know that they work for us. We're no longer accepting words that minimalize us and limit and give us limitations. So understanding that, we have to create our own agenda and make sure that they're here to it. We will not be erased. Because if it's up to them, they will erase us. We're not going to do that. So we have to get to work. We have to create what our own future will look like.
Yeah. Well, this has been another Twoc Talk Thursdays, and we do our very best to educate. We do our very best to empower. And most of all, the things that we do is we want to always be able to give tools so that we as a people can be on our journey to being healthy, healed, and whole. Thank all of you for saying yes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking up space. We love you.
And if y'all gonna be at NBU this weekend, any of y'all gonna be at NBU? Yeah.
Yeah. So those of you who will be there, we'll see you. We'll see you there. But again, we love you all and thank you all. Have an amazing evening. And thank you for everybody who showed up on the lives with your comments and the allies and those who are a part of our community. Thank you for continually to show up to support us here at TWOC, Trans Women of Color Healing Project. And just before we go, I want each of you to say either your organization or where you work at or how people can contact you, please.
I can be reached at www.thelionessstilllives.com. I'm also the executive director of Trans Individuals Living Their Truth Incorporated, and we do have a social media handle. So if you go to tilt.org on Facebook, you can also join our interactive support group there, where we actually provide resources to community. And if you want to book the Lioness, you can also go to @ATL Lioness on Instagram and Samaya Turner on Facebook. Thank you so much for having me, y'all.
Absolutely.
It has been a pleasure to share space with you, sister. We haven't had haven't had our time to really share space, but it has been amazing. Yes. Absolutely.
Trent?
Man, I'm still over here processing. This was so good. Thank y'all so much for this opportunity being here. You can find me on social media, Trent Lamar, Coach Trent, Coach Rev, all social media platforms. If you want to book me, look at my work, you can go to linktogether.org. That's LYNC, the number 2, GETHER.org. My schedule's there. Book me, holler at me. Let's talk some more. And just thank y'all again for this opportunity. Much love.
Absolutely. That will be you, Tori.
All right. So I'm Tori Cooper. You can find me at MS Tori Cooper at yahoo.com. By day, I'm the director of community engagement at the Human Rights Campaign, but I wasn't here representing the Human Rights Campaign. All the opinions that I said and everything that I said was not them.
You're there.
So don't send them any emails talking about what, because I can send them to Ms. Tori Cooper at yahoo.com and I'll send them to spam and to junk. Thank you very much. That being said, what a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be in your plural company. And tonight was no different. So thank everyone for showing up tonight.
Yes.
Thank you, Tori. And my same sentiment exactly. I'm here representing myself, which is Sebastian Smith. Remember, there's a Y in there, so that's SYBASTIAN Smith. You can find me at that name on all social media platforms. By day, I work at Advocates for Trans Equality, where I am the director of organizing. So you can find me there between the hours of 10 and 5. Thank y'all for having me this evening. And yeah, it's been amazing. Back to you, Raquel and Tori. I'm sorry, and Tori.
Thank you all once again. We love you all. We appreciate you all. And I'm telling you, it's an amazing thing to have a relationship, because when you have a relationship and you do right by it, you can pick up the phone and a relationship will show up for you. And so we love you all. And until next time, because there will be a next time, everybody have an amazing weekend. Be safe. Continue to love on yourself. Continue to take care of yourself, because if you love on you and take care of you, then we can take care of others. Another Twoc Talk Thursdays. Good night.